All right. Now, hey, one good thing is there's something that stumped me in this lesson tonight. I'm going to tell y'all, I have racked my brain, and I'm going with what I think is right, but I'm not dogmatic. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll tell you when I get there. So this is a neat one. Y'all be paying attention because you're going to have to go do your homework a little bit to try to help. As a church, we're going to work this one out together. All right? So hopefully that'll be exciting for you, at least out all of this. But last week we talked about Solomon, King Solomon now over Israel. He's built the temple, and he's built his house. Okay? Built the temple and built his house. Took him 7 years to build the temple and 13 years to build his house. So here we are, keep moving on. We're moving on to progression, and children of Israel are happy. They've got their king, they've got back in their land. Now they finally got their temple after 500 years, of having to sacrifice, up on Mount Moriah and different places. So now they finally got everything that they want. And it says here, verse 1, Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the leaders of the fathers' households of the sons of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord from the city of David, which is Zion. Let me go ahead and say something. Zion and Sinai. Mount Zion, Mount Sinai. The reason I want to stop here is because that'll mean some stuff to you in the New Testament when you get into Romans and things like that. And here's the easiest way for you to remember this. Sinai is always symbolic of law and judgment, right? The law, that's where the Ten Commandments came down. Zion is what? Salvation. Holy hill, right? So anytime we see in Scripture Zion, we think of God's salvation. When we see Sinai, you think of what? God's law, okay? That's just some neat things that Paul and them pull out later in the New Testament. So I saw that, I thought I'd mention it. Verse 2 says, All the men of Israel assembled themselves to King Solomon at the feast in the month Ethanim, which is the 7th month. Now I couldn't figure something out here. This is what I was telling you is the mystery. Is this dedication, what's fixing to happen when they bring the Ark of the Covenant into the temple? Did they do this right after they finished the temple at the 7-year mark? It took them 7 years to build the temple. Is that when they bring the Ark in? In other words, did the writer of Kings just go ahead and tell us about Solomon building the house, and now tonight he's going back to tell you about when he built about when they brought the ark up? So the question that I have and I've then reached out to several pastors this afternoon, to ask them their thought on it because I couldn't find it. Now I'm going with what I believe is the answer, and I'll tell you that, and you may agree with it. But I want for your homework, you guys try to help me figure out and help the church understand. Did they bring the Ark of the Covenant to the temple at the end of the building of the temple, or was it 13 years later at the end of the building of Solomon's house? Because see the way this reads here, that Solomon assembled all the elders, he assembled the fathers to bring up the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord from the city of David. All of the men of Israel assembled themselves to King Solomon at the feast in the month Ethanim, which is the 7th month. Okay, that's when they said they come. Now, if you're just going straight from chapter 7, it looks like this happened right at the end of building Solomon's house, that it's 20 years into it. But why would he be doing all of this 13 years later? Why not bring the ark up as soon as he built the temple? See what I'm saying? That's the question here. So I think that this is just the writer going on and finishing the construction of the two houses, but now he's going back and he's telling you about what happened after they finished the temple. It makes sense to me that they would have bought the ark and all the furnishings for the temple after they built the temple. That was the first thing. Let's build God's house first. Let's furnish it. Let's build everything, get it ready to go, okay? So, the temple, it says there, they assembled themselves at the feast in the month Ethan, which is the 7th month. But we know that the temple was finished in the 8th month. That's what it said in 1 Kings 6:38, okay? But Solomon chose the 7th month here for the dedication, so it had to have been 11 months later. So that's why I'm saying what I'm going with, and y'all can please do your homework if you like to do that kind of research, and see if you can look in Chronicles, look back in Samuel, look in Kings, see if you can help me find if you see a different answer. But I think that all of this is happening right at the end of the 7 years. after they finished building the temple. And here they are bringing the ark up. So verse 3 says, Then all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. They brought up the ark of the Lord in the tent of meeting, and all the holy utensils which were in the tent. And the priests and the Levites brought them up. Now we just saw that last week in the end of chapter 7. Okay? In the middle of building, or right, as we're watching Solomon's house be built, and then all of a sudden it starts talking about all the furnishings for the temple. So that's kind of confusing the way the writers are doing it. So we're just not sure, or I'm not sure. So I'm sure all the commentaries I've looked at, it seems like they dodge it. So it's not really like a big deal, but I'm just saying just for our knowledge. When did this happen? Verse 5 says, And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled to him were with him before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and oxen they could not be counted or numbered. That's a lot, okay? Then the priest brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place, into the inner sanctuary of the house, to the most holy place, under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim made a covering over the ark and its poles from above. Now, look on the screen with me at Exodus 25:20. Let me tell you about the cherubim, and let me talk about the ark for just a second. We know that the Ark of the Covenant was very important to the Jewish people, right? God had told them to build it back in Exodus, and this is the representative of where God would meet with the people, and He'll sit up on that Ark of the Covenant, upon that mercy seat. But the cherubim, it says in Exodus 25:20, the cherubim shall have their wings spread upward, covering the mercy seat with their wings and facing one another. The faces of the cherubim are to be turned toward the mercy seat. All right, so here's a picture of these angels, these cherubim that are on the ends of the Ark of the Covenant with their wings spread up and their faces looking towards each other, and they're looking upon top of the mercy seat as if they're guarding the mercy seat. Now, the mercy seat, there's a Greek word that's used for mercy seat I'm trying not to get out there too much with you, but the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, right? Well, years later, they translated the Old Testament into Greek. Because nobody spoke Hebrew, so they wanted it to, as the Jewish people were scattered and they began to speak other languages, and especially Greek, they translated the Bible into Greek, which is called the Septuagint. Now, in the Septuagint, in Hebrews 9:5, he refers to this mercy seat in the Greek language, and it's the word hilasterion, okay? And that means that which makes expiation, which is not a word we use often, but the word that we hear is propitiation. Now, that's the word how many of you just remembered hearing that word? Of propitiation, okay? That's the idea, it carries the idea of a removal of sin. In Ezekiel, it talks about the brazen altar of sacrifice, and it's used there, the same word, hilasterion. This is what happens on the altar. This is the sacrifice. This is the mercy seat where God would sit upon the mercy seat. Okay? And that had to do with the shedding of blood, the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant's there, and this is where God was at. So they would come in and sprinkle the blood upon the mercy seat. Now, what was in the Ark of the Covenant? The tablets, okay? Which were what? What was written on the tablets? The law that He gave Moses. So, here's the inside of the ark is the law. What's on top of the law? What comes between us and the law? What comes between us and judgment? God. That's why it's called the mercy seat. And that's where the sacrifice is made at. So see the symbolism here? This is where so the mercy seat is where God would come into the Holy of Holies. Once a year, the high priest would go in there and sprinkle the blood on there, and it's a sacrifice for all of the people. So, they're ready to bring their Ark of the Covenant finally, after 500 years, into their first temple. So you can imagine how exciting this is. They have built the house for God. Of course, we know that God's not going to live in a house, right? But this is symbolic. This is their way of saying, hey, God, we want to build you your place first. Now, and you'll see God come down to it here in a minute. But verse 8 says, But the poles were so long that the ends of the poles could be seen from the holy place before the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen outside. They are there to this day. So they had to carry the Ark of the Covenant. God had told these men, you got to run these big long poles. It's got rings on the outside of the box, And they had to run these poles through the rings, and that's how they carried it. They couldn't touch the ark. They had to carry it by the poles. And so they said, all they did was walk it in there, these priests, and set it down. You might remember the young guy Uzzah, who the ark was about to fall one time, and he just touched it, and God struck him dead. He's just a kid who just tried to keep it from falling. But you don't touch the Ark of the Covenant. What is that a picture of to us? You don't touch the work of God. God does the work. We can't do that. And so that's what he's telling them. Don't touch my ark. Don't touch the holy mountain, right? Sinai. He gave them these instructions. So he struck them dead. It's actually David's fault. We went through that in Samuel. But these poles, they just left it there. And the poles stick out from the curtain, which that's something the priests could use later to help guide them into the dark place, into the Holy of Holies, where they would go in and do what God had commanded them to do. And you can go back in Exodus and see all the instructions given to the priest when he went into the Holy of Holies. Now, verse 9 says, there was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the sons of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. Now, there was the Aaron's staff. And what was the other thing that was in the ark before? Do y'all remember? The manna. And so now they're not there. Okay, by the time we get to this picture, all we see is the stones of tablet. Now, who can tell me where the Ark of the Covenant is today? If you figure it out, let me know. Because nobody else on the planet knows, okay? You'll be the only person on the planet that knows where the Ark of the Covenant is. Revelation tells us there's one in heaven. But is that the same one? So there's a lot of questions. But let me tell you this. We don't need the Ark of the Covenant. Let me tell you why we don't need the Ark of the Covenant. And why we don't need a temple. And why we don't need sacrifices. Because Jesus paid it all. We have the Holy Spirit now, which is what? Literally God with us all the time. So all of those other things were pictures. We don't need those things. That's why some people get, like with the Lord's Supper, we use grape juice and they use wine, and I'm like, they're like, you need to use wine. That's what I said, why? Do you get like a special experience from it that I don't get? I mean, is your memory better of Jesus' death on the cross than mine because you use wine and I use grape juice? So it's a person. If you want to use wine, use wine. I want to use grape juice. Leave me alone. Don't come at me with this, well, you're missing out. You're being disobedient. No, I'm not being disobedient. It has nothing but we do this in what? Remembrance. So, I don't care if it's Welch's or generic. I like Welch's better. But I can do it in remembrance. So, look what happened. They bring the ark in. Verse 10 says, it happened that when the priest came from the holy place, the cloud filled the house of the Lord. Anytime God come down, we see, come on in, brother. The cloud came down. This is a picture of God coming. Obviously, God's a spirit. We can't see God. You can't touch God. He comes in a cloud, right? And so he comes, it says here, the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priest could not stand to minister because of the cloud. For the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Now, this is a sign that the Jews would know that God approves of the temple that they have built for them. Okay, this is a sign. Now, so Solomon's happy, the priests are happy, the ark is in its place. And so imagine you're the king. What would you do? Like if you've just done this special thing, you bought the ark in, this is a big deal. Now you got to do what? Speech. Right? How many of you speech? So Solomon's like, he's the king, so he's going to give a speech. Now let's follow Solomon's speech. Let's follow Solomon's speech and Solomon's prayer. So let's look on the screen. Y'all can, do y'all like people to read to you, or do you like to just read in silent? Well, you don't get much of a choice, so we're going to read together. But follow on the screen with me. Then Solomon said, the Lord has said that he would dwell in the thick cloud. I have surely built you a lofty house, a place for your dwelling forever. Then the king faced about and blessed all the assembly of Israel, while all the assembly of Israel was standing. He said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who spoke with his mouth to my father David, and has fulfilled it with his hand, saying, since the day that I brought my people Israel from Egypt, I did not choose a city out of all the tribes of Israel in which to build a house that my name might be there. But I chose David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of my father David to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to my father David, because it was in your heart to build a house for my name, You did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless, you shall not build the house, but your son, who will be born to you, he will build the house for my name. Now the Lord has fulfilled his word which he spoke. For I have risen in place of my father David, and sit on the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised, and have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. There I have set a place for the ark, in which is the covenant of the Lord, which he made with our fathers, when he brought them from the land of Egypt. So God kept his promise to David, did he not? He said, I'm going to set up on your throne. And then, of course, there's a future promise here, too. And who is that to? That's to Jesus, who's going to sit on the throne forever. See, the throne that Solomon sat on is no more. It's gone. The throne that David sat on is gone, no more. Okay? And then the second temple they built, that's destroyed. There is no more temple. But what's the throne that Jesus comes? It's an eternal throne, right? And he's already sitting on that throne. He's sat down at the right hand of the Father. And he will rule forever. Now, it's interesting, look back with me, that he tells why God told David that you're not going to build the house, but your son, who will be born to you, he will build the house. But why didn't David get to build the house? God told him why. Because you're a man of war. You got blood. You're a man of bloodshed. You're a man of war. Well, Solomon left that out, didn't he? Wasn't that nice? It's I was thinking about this story of Rahab, and what Dana put in her. Yes, Rahab goes down in history. Me and Destiny were talking about it the other night. Every time we hear the name Rahab, what's the first thought that hits our mind? Harlot, prostitute. Why can't we think Rahab, the woman who married Salmon and had a beautiful son named Boaz, who was a great young man who took in Ruth? That's right. Right. So what do we want to do? I mean, this was a sign of some grace there, I think, of Solomon. He didn't bring that into his speech to the people. Well, my dad was a man of blood. My dad disobeyed God, and so he got punished. He couldn't build the house, but God's let me build it. He didn't do that, does he? He just says, God said your son's going to build it, David. Well, the point is, God kept his promise to David. And that's important that God keeps his promises. Why is that important to us? Because we need his promises, don't we? Without God's promises, we're not sure of our eternal life in heaven. I mean, if you want to go home and wonder if you're going to make heaven or not, nobody wants to live that way. We need to know for sure that we go to heaven. And we have those promises of God. If you believe on me, I'll give you eternal life, right? It's a simple thing. But believing in God means what? What did we say this morning? It's a commitment to following Christ. You've got to live like a Christian. You can't live like the world and say I love Jesus. They're diametrically opposed to each other. You can't do it. You got to choose which one. Like Joshua told those men 2,000 years ago, choose this day whom you're going to serve. You're either going to serve the foreign gods of this world or the only one true God. You got to make up your mind. So now Solomon has told the people, and he's blessed the people, he's blessed God, and we're so thankful, right? He's gave this little speech, and here's what he does. He gives a prayer. Now he's going to pray. And so I want y'all to look at this as we're going through it. And I want you to see if you ever pray to God this way. Now, obviously, we're not going to pray about some of the things because we're not in Israel. We're not the king of Israel. But how often do you really pray like Solomon prays here? Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the assembly of Israel and spread out his hands toward heaven. He said, O Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth beneath. That's a good way to start your prayer, isn't it? Keeping covenant and showing loving kindness to your servants who walk before you with all their heart, who have kept with your servant, my father David, that which you have promised him. Indeed, you have spoken with your mouth and have fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Now, therefore, O Lord, the God of Israel, keep with your servant David, my father, that which you have promised him, saying, you shall not lack a man to sit on the throne of Israel, if only your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me as you have walked. Now, therefore, O God of Israel, let your word, I pray, be confirmed, which you have spoken to your servant, my father David. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house which I have built? Yet have regard to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, O Lord my God, to listen to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you today, that your eyes may be open toward this house night and day, toward the place of which you have said, my name shall be there, to listen to the prayer which your servant shall pray toward this place. Listen to the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel, when they pray toward this place. Here in heaven, your dwelling place, hear and forgive. If a man sins against his neighbor and is made to take an oath, and he comes and takes an oath before your altar in this house, then hear in heaven and act and judge your servants, condemning the wicked by bringing his way on his own head, and justifying the righteous by giving him according to his righteousness. When your people Israel are defeated before an enemy because they have sinned against you, if they turn to you again and confess your name and pray and make supplication to you in this house, then hear in heaven excuse me, and forgive the sin of your people Israel, and bring them back to the land which you gave to their fathers. When the heavens are shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against you, and they pray toward this place, and confess your name, and turn from their sin when you afflict them, then hear in heaven, and forgive the sin of your servants, and of your people Israel. Indeed, teach them the good way in which they should walk, and send rain on your land, which you have given your people for an inheritance. If there is a famine in the land, if there is pestilence, if there is a blight, or mildew, locust, or grasshopper, if their enemy besieges them in the land of their cities, whatever plague, whatever sickness there is, whatever prayer or supplication is made by any man or by all your people Israel, each knowing the affliction of his own heart, and spreading his hands toward this house, then hear in heaven your dwelling place, and forgive and act and render to each according to all his ways, whose heart you know. For you alone know the hearts of all the sons of men, that they may fear you all the days that they live in the land which you have given to our fathers. Also, concerning the foreigner who is not of your people Israel, when he comes from a far country for your name's sake, for they will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and of your outstretched arm. When he comes and prays towards this house, hear in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all for which the foreigner calls to you, in order that all the peoples of the earth may know your name, to fear you, as do your people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have built is called by your name. When your people go out to battle against their enemy, by whatever way you shall send them, and they pray to the Lord toward the city which you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name, then hear in heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. When they sin against you, now watch this, I like this. For there is no man who does not sin. See what Solomon put in there? He remembered that and remembers in his prayer. When they sin against you, and you are angry with them, and deliver them to an enemy, so that they take them away captive to the land of the enemy, far off or near, if they take thought in the land where they have been taken captive, and repent, and make supplication to you in the land of those who have taken them captive, saying, we have sinned and have committed iniquity, we have acted wickedly. If they return to you with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their enemies who have taken them captive, and pray to you toward their land which you have given to their fathers, the city which you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name, then hear their prayer and their supplication in heaven, your dwelling place, and maintain their cause. You think Daniel remembered this? Anyway. And forgive your people who have sinned against you in all their transgressions, which they have transgressed against you, and make them objects of compassion before those who have taken them captive, that they may have compassion on them. I like this closing. For they are your people, and your inheritance, which you have brought forth from Egypt, from the midst of the iron furnace, that your eyes may be open to the supplication of your servant, and to the supplication of your people Israel, to listen to them whenever they call to you. For you have separated them from all the peoples of the earth as your inheritance, as you spoke through Moses your servant, when you brought our fathers forth from Egypt. O Lord God. I like the ending of his prayer. O Lord God. Now, that's a lot of he covered it all, didn't he? It seemed like he covered it all. It's almost like a man that I know what these people are going to do. So I'm covering all the bases. But what he's doing is he's acknowledging in front of the people that you are our God, and we are coming to you. We will always come to you. And he already knows the promises of God, right? He knows that God is a merciful God. I mean, it's many years into 500 years now since Egypt. I mean, goodness gracious, he's seen God's mercy over and over and over. God keeps forgiving the children of Israel. Now, let's wrap it up here in the final few verses with Solomon's benediction. When Solomon had finished praying this entire prayer in supplication to the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread toward heaven. Now, who can remember how he started off his prayer? He was standing, wasn't he? How does he... Now what? All of a sudden, he's getting up off his knees. This is a king getting down on his knees. Somewhere during that prayer, the Bible didn't tell us. Did y'all see anywhere during the prayer? Time to get, he got down on his knees. I think it hit him pretty soon. He stood up in front of the people and raised his hands. He started praying. He didn't even remember what he was doing. I'm talking to the Almighty God. I need to get in a proper position. He got on his knees pretty quick. So it says he got up from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread toward heaven, and he stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, according to all that he promised. Not one word has failed of all his good promise, which he promised through Moses his servant. Not one word. God keeps his promises. May the Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. May he not leave us or forsake us, that he may incline our hearts to himself, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his ordinances, which he commanded our fathers. And may these words of mine, with which I have made supplication before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he may maintain the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel, as each day requires, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God. There is no one else. See there? That's always, I said this morning, that's always been God's plan for his people, that the world may know that he is God and there is no other. That was the Jewish people. Remember Jonah? He didn't want to go, did he? That's always been God's plan, that we go into all the world and tell them that he is the one true God and he is the only source of salvation. In the last one he says, Let your heart therefore be wholly devoted to the Lord our God, to walk in his statutes and to keep his commandments, as at this day. So there's the instructions from the king to the people. Let your heart be wholly devoted to the Lord our God. That's what he told them to do. Solomon gave this long prayer and this benediction. I think this is a great way to start everything off, to let the people know that he's sincere. That was a sincere prayer, was it not? He covered everything. That wasn't just a repetitious prayer. And I think God looks upon Solomon's heart. He's the king. And he's going to bless the people here. Now to wrap this up here come the sacrifices. So he's done the prayer. He's blessed the people. Now he's going to do this, the dedication sacrifices. Okay? And now, before we read the sacrifice, I want to remind you that there's 5 main types of sacrifices that we see in the Old Testament that they had to perform. The burnt offerings, the grain offerings, the peace offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering. Okay? These are the things we read about that God had required. Each of these sacrifices involved certain elements. It was either an animal or it was a fruit of the field, and they all had a specific purpose. And most of these sacrifices, when they performed them, were split into 2 or 3 portions. So there would always be God's portion first, right? And then there was a portion for the Levites, the priest that managed the temple and all of that. They were provided for. And if there was a third, a portion would be kept by the person offering the sacrifice. And the sacrifices that we read about for the Old Testament Israelites, sometimes they were voluntary, and some of them were mandatory sacrifices. So, Solomon, to complete this temple dedication, he's going to lead the people in offering what we would call the peace offering. Okay? And so look what he does in these last few verses. Now the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifice before the Lord. Notice, the king and all Israel. Guys, this is spread a long way. It's a lot of people. A lot of people. Millions. Okay? All of Israel with him. Can you imagine the crowd that day? They've all come from Jerusalem, right? They're squeezed in there. I mean, there's people everywhere. Now, with that many people, notice what he does. Solomon offered for the sacrifice of peace offerings, as I said, which he offered to the Lord, 22,000 oxen. 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the sons of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. Now on the same day the king consecrated the middle of the court that was before the house of the Lord, because there he offered the burnt offering and the grain offering and the fat of the peace offerings. For the bronze altar that was before the Lord was too small to hold the burnt offering and the grain offering and the fat of the peace offering. So he couldn't go in there to where they would normally do the sacrifices. He had to go out into the courtyard, clear out that area, consecrate it, right? Clean it good. And they started making sacrifices out in the courtyard. Because, 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. I was telling this pastor come to visit the other day. We were eating lunch, and I said, man, I'm so glad that we didn't have to continue all this stuff, especially since he's called me to be a preacher. If I had, they were in there, they were waist deep in blood all the time. They're the morning and evening sacrifice, they're constantly sacrificing something. It never ended. So they had to go into the courtyard to complete all of these sacrifices to meet this many people. So Solomon observed the feast at that time. Now this is the Feast of Booths, the Feast of Tabernacles. You'll read about often in one of the feasts. So it was at the same time. And he lets us know that there. The feast at that time, and all Israel with him, a great assembly from the entrance of Hamath, that's way up at the north of Israel, to the brook of Egypt, okay, way down south, before the Lord our God for 7 days and 7 more days, 14 days. That's how many days they were there going through all these sacrifices. So imagine you're in line out there. You're just in line. You're in line for 14 days, waiting some people to come and, for their sacrifice. On the 8th day, he sent the people away, and they blessed the king. Then they went to their tents, joyful and glad of heart, for all the goodness that the Lord had shown to David, his servant, and to Israel, his people. Now, isn't it interesting? He closes up with saying, they went to their tents, joyful and glad of heart, for all the goodness that the Lord had shown to David. Not Solomon. David's been dead. But they were thankful because God had made the promise to who? To David. And that's what they still remember today. Now, interesting thing that we know about the Jewish people, and I think some of you have heard me say this before. The Jewish people know that the Messiah who is to come, right, that they're looking for, they know that he's to come from David. He's a direct descendant of David. Now today, if you ask a Jewish person, how do you know if a person come on the scene and said, I'm the Messiah, how do you prove he come from the lineage of David? They have no way. When Titus came through in 70 AD and destroyed it all, it took them in the final 3 years there, they pretty much wiped out everything. Those people didn't have anything left. So they don't have their, so there's no way they could prove it. Who's the last person on the planet that had a legitimate, something that they know, their Pharisees, their leaders, Sanhedrin, agreed that Jesus was of the line of David? Now you know why Matthew, in the beginning of his book, he makes it so clear that Jesus comes the direct lineage, the direct genealogy. Jesus comes through Mary's side and Joseph's side. Even though Joseph's not his earthly father, his biological father, Joseph's still in the line of David, just as Mary was. So either way you spin it, they know that Jesus of Nazareth was from the line of David, from Jesse, right? From David. So they don't know. David is their man. David's who they love, right? So. Whew, that wasn't too bad, was it? Did y'all enjoy that? I think I worry more about y'all than I should. Hey, Ezra stood up and read from the scrolls, right? From morning to evening, those people had to sit there and listen. So you only had 30 minutes. Anybody got any good questions tonight?